Hey, so I wanted to talk about the critique essay today. The critique essay is one that some people will struggle with because it's a skill that we should all have, but that we're not really taught how to do in school or in our broader experience in the American culture. We're taught how to summarize, how to just kind of repeat back, this is what it said, this is what the movie was about. We're taught how to summarize and respond. This is what it said, and I disagree. This is what it said, and I didn't like it. But critique is something different. Critique is looking at the effectiveness of whatever it is that we're critiquing. What is it trying to accomplish, and how well does it do that? So, for example, if we were to critique movies, we could look at, okay, well, this is supposed to be a funny movie. How is it accomplishing that? Is it accomplishing that? We've all sat down to watch a movie that's supposed to be funny, and you're like, this is just stupid. I haven't laughed a single time, right? The important thing to remember is that this is not about agreement. You don't have to agree with what the author's saying. This isn't about whether you like it or not. I don't like horror movies, but I can critique a horror movie. I can look at, okay, what are the expectations? And is this a good horror movie? Doesn't matter whether I like it or not. When somebody's making an argument, we can listen to them and say, I disagree with lowering the drinking age, but you make some really good points. You brought in some good evidence. I still disagree, but that was a good argument, right? That's what I have to do with essays all the time when I'm grading. I don't agree with all the ideas that you all are arguing or putting forth, but I have to look at, okay, their purpose is they want me to, consider this, and they're trying to persuade me, and are they doing a good job of achieving their purpose? So, this is focusing on talking about the article. You're not talking about the content. You're not talking about what you feel about the content or the ideas. You're talking about the article's success. You're critiquing it. So if you look at the critique essay assignment sheet, remember that we've done a blog on both of these, the Calderoni article, and also this week we're doing the Freyer, Estrin, and Arif, their article. But you just have to pick one to critique. So if you look at the second page of the assignment sheet, I really recommend you pull it up. You'll see that section 1 of this is in your introduction paragraph. You need to give the article title and the author's name. Remember that article titles go in quotation marks, and we want to spell the author's names correctly. You want to give the article's thesis. So what is the main point of Calderoni's article? What is the main point of Freyer, Estrin, and Arif's article? So what's their main thesis? But then we need your thesis. What is your judgment? We don't want your thesis to just be a summary to say, well, Calderoni was talking about, the environmental impact of American death rituals. Okay? But what is your evaluation? Your thesis has to be on there to say, this article was successful because of blah, 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 blah. Or this article was a poorly written article because of blah, 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 blah. So section 2 on here is you need to summarize the article so that people who are reading your critique of it can understand your main points, understand what the article was about. It's just like if you read a movie review or a book review, it'll have this is a brief overview of what happens in the movie, and now I'm going to critique whether it was good or not. Then on here we have 3 criterion. So our 3 criteria. Criteria is the plural. It's like data and bacteria. It's plural. So the singular of bacterium, datum, and criterion. We need to think about our basis of judgment. So criteria are these basis of judgment. We have these all the time, and we may not actually think about it. Think about what makes a good friend. for you. So you may say something like, well, they have to be honest. They have to be loyal. We have to have common interests. They have to be funny. Maybe we have to have the same religion. Maybe we have to be the same age. These are what you will judge a good friend on. So if somebody is not honest or loyal or funny, you're going to be like, that's not a good friend. Think about shoes. What are your criteria for a good pair of shoes? Do they have to be cool looking? Do they have to be comfortable? Do they have to be inexpensive? Do they have to not squeak on the floor when you're walking on linoleum? How do you judge good shoes? We have this for everything. What makes a good pen, a good restaurant, a good car, a good shirt, everything. So the important thing to remember about criteria is that they vary upon person. It may be more important for you that your best friend be of the same age, and other people may not care. It may be important that you and your best friend have shared interests. Other people may not care if you have much in common, right? And also, it varies upon the type of friend. So is this a romantic friend, a platonic friend, a family friend, a church friend, a best friend? Think about restaurants. We have different criteria and we put different emphasis on them if we're going through a drive-through as opposed to a sit-down meal. If I go to a drive-through, I expect my food will come to me in a paper bag. It has to be fast. It has to be cheap. But if I go spend $60 on a meal at a fancy sit-down restaurant, if you're going to spend $60 for a plate of food and they bring it to you in a paper bag, you might be surprised, right? I don't expect McDonald's to have tablecloths and flowers there on the table. But if I'm going to go sit down to a fancy romantic dinner, I may want a tablecloth. I may not want, to have to go wait in line and bring my food out on a tray. So think about, for an article, and especially an online article, because that's how we're reading these, what are our criteria of judgment for these? We want the article to be informative, be factual. We want it to have, you could potentially evaluate the evidence. You could evaluate the links. Does it link you to other information? Is it relevant? Does it do a good job explaining? We did the one blog post on logical fallacies. Is there anything illogical or unsupportive that's happening in this article? So those are the types of things we'll judge this on. So on the back page of the assignment sheet, you can see I put 3 criteria, and you may have 4. I wouldn't have much more than 4. But how are you judging this? And remember, it's not whether you like the article. It's not whether you agree with the ideas. You're right. You're judging the success of the article. It's not about the topic. You'll also see on here that we have to have a counter argument. So even an article that is well written, there's something it could have improved upon. If there's something that an article that's kind of just really crappy and you're like, this is a failure, there's probably one thing that it did okay. So look for the counter, because nothing is completely good or completely bad, right? There is no black and white in this world that I can see. It's just a shade of dark gray to light gray. And for your criteria and for that counter argument, you have to support it. Your counter argument also, you need to make sure to respond to it. So if you're like, the whole article, your whole essay is about this article is well written, and then you show a weakness, you need to respond to it. You can't just leave readers on the weakness side of the fence. You want to bring them back to the side that's talking about the strengths of the article. So you can, say it did these things really well, and even though this one wasn't as great, it still was successful overall. You need to make sure to respond to your counter argument to bring the readers back to the side of the fence that you want them on, whether it was, a success or a failure. And then we need to have our conclusion. Now, remember that This is 3 to 5 pages. So your paragraphs need to go to the bottom of that third page. And your summary of the article's content shouldn't be more than half. So if you write me 3 pages just summarizing the article, and then in your conclusion paragraph, you're like, oh, it's really well written, that's not a critique. At least a page and a half need to be critiquing the success and effectiveness of this article. So if your summary is going way over that page and a half, you need to condense and boil down, because this is a critique. So we want the emphasis to be on critiquing the article's success. Also, it says you have to bring in one other source. So you need to bring in something else. So if you're saying, that this was a weakness in this article, you can bring in another source that does that thing that Calderoni's article didn't, or whatever. The source that you bring in, you're going to have to go find. That could be one of the links. If you're saying, okay, the links were really great in this article, and I'm going to tell you an example of one of those links, you can go and bring that information in. So in the end, we're going to be citing 2 sources on here. We're going to have the one that you're critiquing, and then you're going to have your other source. That's why citation is so important in this essay. I have to be able to look at every single piece of information, every single idea in here, and know whether it's yours, whether it's Freire, Estrin, and Arof's, or whether this is Joe Schmo's from the other source she brought in. I have to be able to know whose information this is. So that's why we have to make sure that our citation is correct. So we're juggling citation for 2 sources, and we have your information in here as well. So if you have any questions about this, or if you're struggling with this, I will have office hours twice this week. I'm happy to look at your draft. Make sure to ask any questions you have.